أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الفاتح الخاتم وعلى آله حق الدار العظيم. السلام عليكم. Good afternoon, everyone. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praises are due to the Almighty Allah, the Lord of the universe, the most beneficent, the most merciful, the sovereign of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and from you alone we implore help. Guide us the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, neither of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray. O Allah, maintain your praise persistently upon our chief and master Muhammad, the key to that which is closed, the seal to that which is past, the upholder of the truth by means of truth, the proper guide to your straight path, in upon his family, according to his eminence and his great honor. Assalamu alaikum once again. Good afternoon, everyone. I am back on my series of lectures on the topic, the Divine Mandate series. If you can remember, in the last session, we were drawing a parable from the story and experience of Prophet Joseph and his brothers. That is specifically the chapter titled Joseph, Surah to Yusuf alayhi salam, consisted of 111 verses, for us to see how the mandate conferred on Abraham was initially passed to his children, starting with Prophet Ishmael, who resided in Mecca, and down to Prophet Isaac, who stayed there in Syria, then to the son of Isaac, that is Prophet Jacob, and how Jacob, one of his children, was chosen for the mandate, that is Prophet Joseph, and how his brothers were trying to make efforts so as to stop the realization of that mandate conferred on Joseph. And having dreamed of what will turn out to happen to him, that is the fact that he was going to be chosen above his brothers, and that was the implication of the dream. And for that dream to be realized, Joseph had to be taken out of the house and had to be taken away from his parents. And that was exactly what happened. In fact, those trying to work against the realization of the divine choice of Joseph proved to be the essential tools that were used divinely by the Almighty Allah in realizing that dream. Because assuming that he was not taken out of his parents' house, that is, let's assume that he was not taken away from his parents. He stayed there with his father. How would he come to Egypt, and how would he be taken in by the Prime Minister of Egypt, and how would he eventually be taken to the prison for him to even interpret dreams to some of his colleagues there? And how would the story of his knowledge reach the Egyptian monarch, having the same problem when he had a terrible dream that wanted an urgent interpretation? One of the colleagues of Joseph recalled that he had a dream during his stay with Prophet Joseph in the prison, and how Prophet Joseph interpreted it for him. And we were exactly at the point when he was taken to the Egypt, and when he was bought and adopted by the Egyptian Prime Minister upon the suggestion of his wife. His wife told him that asa an yanfa'ana aw nattakizahu walada wa kadhalika makkanna li yusufa fil ardi wa linu'allimahu min ta'wil al ahadith wallahu ghalibun ala amrih walakinna akthara an-nas la ya'lamun. That he will be of great benefit to us if we adopt him as our son, because we don't have one. وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض وكذلك مكنا ليوسف في الأرض ونعلم من It is in that manner that we provided opportunities for Prophet Joseph for him to become what he was destined to be. And we gave him knowledge of the interpretation of dreams. The Almighty Allah made an emphasis here. Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. The Almighty Allah will always win any battle. The Almighty Allah is always the winner. He will be the one to win whatever kind of battles. And when he predestined anything to happen, no amount of forces can stop the realization of what he predestined to take place. So why this emphasis amidst the story, that is just in the middle of the story of Joseph? Why? Because this is providing us with a clarity to know that if not for the fact that they work against the destiny of Prophet Joseph, perhaps there wouldn't be any other way that such destiny would be realized. Because instead of them working against this reality, and Almighty Allah working from another angle, no, He used their efforts, their machinations to drive faster the realization of that reality. And in fact, the Holy Quran narrated to us how the wife of the master of Joseph fell in love with him, and how she tried to seduce him. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هِيتَ لَكَ قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ, and how he refused and ran away. In his efforts to get out of the palace, she tore his shirt from behind, and they came to meet his master at the gate of the house, of the palace. So he wanted to know why, what happened. Before Joseph would speak, she spoke fast and said, "Ma jaza'u man arada bi ahlika su'an illa an yusjana aw adhabun alim." What should be the punishment, a requital for anyone who intends to have an affair with your wife? Of course, except that he should be imprisoned or be terribly punished. She wanted to avoid killing him. She wanted to avoid the judgment of killing him. That is why she suggested imprisonment or terrible punishment. And that will also teach our psyche that if we want to know who is guilty when we come across exactly the same scenario, you know, most cases, the guilty party will insist to speak first because of the guilty conscience. He will be motivated to speak first before the innocent party. That is why the wife of the prime minister insisted. That's why she spoke first before Joseph, because of the guilty conscience. She can't afford to wait for the innocent party to speak out. That's why she spoke first. And she was the first to suggest the kind of punishment that should be meted out to him. In fact, she made a drastic conclusion that She pronounced him guilty while she was not a judge. Rather, she too was a litigant, just like him. So she arrogated to herself the right to pronounce the other party guilty and even sentence him or suggest the appropriate sentence for him, that he should be imprisoned or terribly punished. You can see how the Holy Quran teaches us human psychology, how to identify easily who is guilty and who is not. Whenever you come across such kind of situation, these verses will teach you how to know who is guilty and who is not. The guilty party will not stop at just exonerating themselves or suggesting that the other party is guilty. It will even go ahead to pronounce, not only to pronounce the other party guilty, it will go ahead to suggest the appropriate punishment, the appropriate sentence that should be meted out. So you can see, while we read the Holy Quran, we need to develop that behavior of understanding the psychological implication of the divine statements. That is, what do we derive, what lessons do we derive from the verses? And the verses are there to train judges how to know who is guilty and who is not. So, إِلَّا أَنْ يُسْجَنَ أَوْ أَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And Joseph was very calm, and he responded calmly. قَالَ هِيَ رَاوَدَتْنِي عَنْ نَفْسِي. She is the one that tried to seduce me and have an affair with me. And at that very moment, the divine exoneration came calling. The Almighty Allah exonerated Joseph with a testimony given by a member of her own family. A baby in a cradle spoke out because he witnessed everything. The baby spoke out miraculously and exonerated Joseph and said, وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا إِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصَهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ مِنْ قُبُلٍ فَصَدَقَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ وَإِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ فَكَذَبَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. A member of her family who happened to be barely a baby in a cradle spoke out and said, I witnessed everything, and she is the one that tries to seduce him. She is the one that tries to seduce him. And furthermore, if you want to know this very well, in kana qamisahu qudda min qubulin fasadakat. Check his shirt. If his shirt is torn, that is from his chest, that is the front of his shirt is the front part of his shirt is the one that is torn. That means that she was right in her claim, that he was the one trying to assault her, and in an attempt to defend herself, she tore his shirt. And If the shirt is torn from behind, that means that he was trying to run away, and in her attempt to drag him, she tore his shirt. And when the shirt was checked, the evidence was found in favor of Joseph. فلما رأى قميصه قد من دبر قال إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم. So the testimony was tendered by a member of our family. And another thing that we need to pause here and learn is that you can see that means that there is virtually no evidence tendered in any court of law that is stronger than an evidence or a testimony given against a member of a family. That is, the witness happened to be a member of the family of the person in question. That is the person that is the defendant. If the testimony tendered against a defendant came from someone who happened to be a member of his family, that means no testimony can be truer than this. قال إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم. Yusuf arid an hadha. So, in a nutshell, this goes on to teach us a lot of things. That the process of growing up to the level of assuming the divine mandate is quite crucial. For Prophet Joseph to come to the full realization of what was destined for him, he had to suffer a lot. Despite the fact that it was divinely predestined, nothing could stop it. But he had to suffer. He had to be taken out of his family. He had to be thrown into a well. He had to be sold by his brothers. He had to be taken to the house of strange people and sat there as a slave. He had to be taken to the prison at the end of the day. So that means that this is nothing but part of your machinations as women. Certainly your machination is quite very great. It's terribly great. So turning to Joseph, he said, Yusuf arid another. Yusuf, I want you to look away, and keep this thing as confidential. What happened here should remain confidential. It shouldn't be exposed to any other party, anyone. For you, turning to his wife, he said, وَاسْتَغْفِرِي لِذَنْبِكِ إِنَّكِ كُنْتِ مِنَ الْخَاطِئِينَ. Repent for the sin you have committed. وَاسْتَغْفِرِي لِذَنْبِكِ إِنَّكِ كُنْتِ مِنَ الْخَاطِئِينَ. For you have already been one of terrible sinners, because khati in Arabic means someone who deliberately committed a sin. Khati. That is why in the chapter Surah Al-Qasas, or the story, while describing Pharaoh and his fellows, the Almighty Allah said, Inna Fir'auna wa Hamana wa junudahuma kanu khati'in. Pharaoh, Haman, and their troops were all sinners, khati'un. So it is quite different to say somebody is mukhti. Mukhti, that is when it is in the frame of rubai, as al-fi'l rubai, aqta'a, yukhti'u, khata'an. That means that it was not deliberate. It was mistakenly committed. That is akhta'. But if it is khata' and it is subject has to be mukhti, the subject noun is mukhti, and that means that it was a mistaken sin. But if it is a deliberate sin, the subject noun is khati. Innaki kunti min al-khati'in. For certainly you have been one of those who committed a terrible sin deliberately. That is, you are one of deliberate sinners. Innaki kunti min al-khati'in. And although the master of Prophet Joseph demanded from him that this issue should remain confidential. It shouldn't be leaked to any other party, because this is the only way he can have his prestige to be preserved and his honor to be safeguarded, because it has to do with an attempt or attempted infidelity of his wife. We don't want that, because definitely it will make a terrible damage to his image. But despite all this, the story leaked. And one thing that we need to ponder on here is that, of course, Joseph wouldn't be the one to leak the story. Arabs used to say that any confidential issue that goes beyond two persons, then it has already exploded to the knowledge of everybody. Then it will be exposed. It is already exposed to the knowledge of almost everybody. If it goes beyond only two people, you can see here the king or the wazir was involved, his wife, and Prophet Joseph, and at least a witness that tendered a testimony in defense of Joseph, although he was a baby. But to show you that if something happened in a palace, it can hardly remain confidential. That is why the story leaked out to the people of Egypt, and the women of that city started mocking the wife of Wazir, calling her names, that she committed a shameful act by trying to lure her slave into having an affair with her, and she fell. So that was how it leaked. تراود فتاها عن نفسه, that the wife of Wazir tried to seduce her slave boy into having an affair with her. She appeared filled with love for him. Certainly she must have been misguided. For us, left to us to give our opinion, certainly she's in an obvious misguidance. She must have been obviously misguided for her to fall in love with a slave boy and even make an attempt to have an affair with him. So when she heard the story, she did not send security guards to arrest them and take them to prison. No. She was very smart. Instead, she sent them an invitation to a dinner organized by her. And they honored the invitation. They all came. So she wanted to prove to them how weak they too will turn out to be in the face of the young man, Joseph. They too will not have the power to resist the temptation. So we are going to stop here, inshallah. When we come back in the next session, we are going to continue exactly where we stopped. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin al-Fatih lima ulik wal khatim lima sabaka nasir al-haqq bil haqq wal hadi ila siratikal mustaqim wa ala alihi aqdam al-azim. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi.